So this is the story about how the world from 1984 came to be. 1984, the George Orwell novel, still referenced so often here in 2025, I don't think we're ever going to be able to escape it. I mean, it's weird how much that book predicted. I mean, the further we continue to go, the more stuff it continues to get right. This is actually the one single book in high school that I was glad they forced me to read. Now, if you haven't been forced to read this book just yet, or if you don't remember, this is the setting. It's an alternative universe, an alternative 1984, where the world map looks like this. The book itself takes place on this Airstrip 1, which is actually the United Kingdom, but it's also important to note that Orwell, the author that came up with this Big Brother is Watching concept book, he wrote that back in the late 40s, between 1946 and 1949. Therefore, with that information, we can kind of try to piece together exactly what would have had to happen in this universe for us to end up with that map we saw a little bit earlier. So instantly, we're showing 1931 to 1932, the United States goes socialist, which is that impossible? Is that like the most insane concept? Not necessarily. Remember, this was desperate times. We're talking the Great Depression. This is after Black Tuesday, the stock market crash. American people were like searching for answers. We did obviously do a whole lot of New Deal policies, which had a lot of, socialist leanings to them. So this is not crazy, I would say. So boom, instantly the US has turned socialist in this world. And now by 1939, so everything else stays about the same, I'm assuming. I mean, we see the German Reich here. There's still a big old blob. They did the Auschwitz of Austria. They've remilitarized the Rhineland. And now by September 1st, 1939, they're still moving in after Poland. I'm thinking we shouldn't see too many changes in World War II. Compared to, because like we said, Orwell wrote the book immediately after World War II, and this was just the coming future of what he thought we could potentially be living in. Now, obviously, he was not right when it comes to the map, or when it comes to when all these things would come into place. Obviously, he predicted 1984. It's just a book, but we're way beyond the year 1984 now. However, like I said, the common themes, authoritarian governments constantly watching your every move, having to do things in secrecy. I mean, with the digital age and the way we are being tracked through our cellular devices, it's terrifying how often I literally say something out loud, say something like I want a certain product, and then all of a sudden it pops up in my TikTok algorithm. That's not even a joke. That happens so often, and I'm like, that's freaking weird. That's really weird. Anyways, the partition of Poland. Germany and the Soviet Union successfully partitioned Poland as part of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Again, that happened in real life. God save our souls. So obviously, my prediction is, first of all, we can kind of already predict how this is going to roll out. So there is Airstrip 1, there's the de facto like Western world, then there's this massive Eurasian continent. It's a forever war, it's like a three-way war, and then there's something in China, basically. But basically, in World War II, we're going to need to see the USSR take all of continental Europe. I'm thinking. Now, there could be some twists and turns. Maybe they don't necessarily need to. Maybe there's just a World War III that breaks out in the 60s. I guess World War III is going to have to break out if we want the world of 1984 and the forever war, these three massive empires fighting each other forever. I guess World War III has to break out. I'm thinking, but let's go ahead and see. I love that we actually have numbers showing us. We have the Winter War, the Saar Offensive. A small group of French forces have launched an unusual offensive. What is that? An unusual? Something like that? I like that this is all being done in, I think, Hearts of Iron 4. Or the map is just very, very inspired by Hearts of Iron. Whoa! Okay, I was not expecting that. The USA attacks Canada. On the 6th of March at 5 a.m., the United States Army, what does that say? Fired the first shot on the Canadian border. Why? Because we're socialist? So right now, are we working together with the Soviet Union? That is definitely not the way I thought this video was going to go. Not at all. Now, it's been a long time since I've read the book 1984. I'm not sure if they dropped clues at all to this. The normal thing that happened, Germany attacked Denmark and Norway. They took that over very, very quickly. And now they're going around the lowlands, going around the Maginot Line, and they're going to, I'm thinking, collapse Paris. But you know what? I'm now just realizing this video is probably going to throw a lot of twists and turns at me. This is by the YouTube channel, The Italian Mapper, by the way, just to let everyone know. So now the French are gone. They've capitulated, and that is the skinny mustache man, Hitler himself, that now controls a lot of it. Now, the way I see the world map from 1984, it's definitely a Soviet-controlled world, but I mean, I guess you don't technically need to go in that way, right? Maybe you do, actually, because it is called the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. So that means that, well, I mean, the video can do whatever it wants, but I'm pretty sure the Eurasian Empire here, which has the Soviet Union flag, this is just one interpretation of the novel, doesn't necessarily mean it's the exact thing. They are definitely communist, and then Oceania is what the U.S. and all of America is, and then East Asia is China, the Korean Peninsula, Southeast Asia, and Japan. I've seen different depictions of this map, though. Some of it has a lot more of the neutral nations, the white nations, the neutrality places. I've seen that be extended across all of India and a lot more of Africa. All right, so instantly, I think the U.S. is going to do fine against Canada, although, well, let's see. Britain withdraws. The war with the Soviet... Oh, that's right, because right now, the USA is at war with not only Canada, but the entire British Empire. So the UK has signed a peace with Germany. Churchill announces total effort to save Canada. That is fascinating. So they go ahead and finally give what Hitler wanted the most, which was a peace deal at this time when Britain stood alone before he invaded the Soviet Union, because that was the best chance the Germans had, or the Axis as a whole had, at winning World War II. They had to get Britain to peace out back in 1940, the year 1940. And that is exactly what happened because the U.S. has gone a little bit crazy with it. I'm assuming this is not a USA where FDR is in charge. So wait a second, this means, so boom, Canada's capitulated. We're going to see an all entirely communist world, aren't we? Because, well, the USA is not necessarily communist, although their name is the United States of Socialist America, right? They might have that in their name, but that still could mean they're essentially communist. I mean, all sorts of communist nations and states have put socialist in their name, but they're essentially communist, or they're heavily, heavily socialist. All right, so we now have two massive communist powers. Is the Americans and Stalin going to ally? It maybe appears so. Okay, so boom, the Axis have gotten rid of Yugoslavia, and they have launched Operation Barbarossa. Now, in this timeline, Hitler's not going to have to worry about his western flank because he already knocked out the British out of the war. He could put all of his efforts against Stalin Daddy with that big, thick mustache. And I gotta say, that's probably going to go pretty well for him. He doesn't have to worry about anything else. He doesn't have to have... mind you, this man knew there would eventually be a huge naval invasion from specifically the British and the Americans. So he made this massive, what was called the North Atlantic Sea Wall, or something like that, the North Atlantic Wall, all the way from this part of southern Spain up to Norway. And it just had a ton of little, things. If you ever watched Saving Private Ryan, the movie, just all those little barriers that they put out. They had all sorts of things to prepare for eventually that stuff. And then, of course, they had to have, people, soldiers locked down, defensive resources being taken to that front line. In this world, they don't got to worry about any of that. They can put it all towards the Soviets. And I think ultimately that is going to help them get the dub. Uh-oh. The Patriot War. The Soviet army resists relentlessly, and the Germans' offensive. Fighting in the Soviet Union has never been so present. So this is obviously very Hearts of Iron 4 themed. What happened with the Canada right there? Or sorry, well, Canada doesn't even exist anymore. Why does it really feel like the Germans are going to... Bro, no way. Are they going to claim... Oh, well, to be fair, it is 1945. So how much time has passed? Did they not declare war? That... now I got to back this up and look at the dates. It's July. It's 1941 when the Germans... Bro, I'm not buying this. I'm sorry. I'm not buying this. I'm not going to buy this. Unless the Americans are... I mean, we didn't say any of that. But unless the Americans are, like, heavily aiding the Soviet Union, like how they did, moving up through Iran and shipping all sorts of food and equipment and Spam. Don't forget Spam. The Soviets were forced to eat that canned meat for a long time there because it was just perfect. It was perfect to move and transport. But you're telling me just the Soviet Union was going to fight the Germans alone and push them back. Now, to be fair, and then they don't even get close to the Caspian Sea. It's 1942. It's 1943. Okay, they do get to the Caspian Sea. I'm sorry, I'm not buying this. I needed something else. I need at least maybe the Brits. Well, the Brits and Americans, are they still at war? Did they sign a peace deal? We don't even know. I need to know that the Brits are over here supplying a ton of stuff. The British intelligence, the American steel, obviously the Soviet blood is still being offered up. Those are the three factors that contributed to winning World War II for the Allied side. And the Germans are still pushing in. Now they've actually reversed the fighting. And now they're going to obviously take this. Now, because the British and Americans are no longer working together, now Romania gets taken over. Everything is going to have to go to the Soviet Union. I mean, we did predict that. That is ultimately how this was going to have to go for us to land in the 1984 world, which I keep showing that previous map. So I knew that. I have a big problem with the Soviets winning that solo. I don't like that. I'm not buying that, but let's just wait. Maybe there's some details. Maybe there's some mental gymnastics that we can fly through. Okay, now the United States is actually here in Africa, I see. So, okay, so the USA was still possibly at war. Okay, maybe that's why I needed to shut the hell up, Drew. That's why you needed someone to shut the hell up. It looks like maybe the Brits were not fighting the Germans anymore, but the USSA, still was. Okay, maybe I'll buy that. Maybe. Let's not just disregard the contributions of the British Empire too at the time. Obviously, the USA and the Soviet Union, I think, they did a lot of work to defeat the Germans and the Italians and the whole Axis, obviously, the Japanese too. But let's not disregard the Brits. I'm thinking the Brits are not a part of this. But yeah, America was fighting the Germans at this time, and they were clearly fighting through Africa, and then they got to the southern part of Italy, and then they did take back France. And now France has been revived. And here we go, Soviet-American War, instantly. So, okay, I'm fine with this. I'm actually fine with this. I'll take it back. So, the political conflict between the two superstates has disorientated the Soviet Union aims to occupy all of mainland Europe. Yeah, I could see why Stalin Dad would be a little bit mad about that. Now, keep in mind, we have to keep the East Asian Federation alive, which means that the U.S. cannot win their war over Japan. They have to keep Japan, or actually, there's a couple ways to make that third nation possible from 1984. You just need China to unite, probably under communism, and then the Chinese communists somehow find a way to build a navy, or maybe the USA aids the Chinese communists or something like that. But the Chinese are going to need to take over Japan, or Japan's going to need to take over all of China. One of those two things needs to happen, because the power that consolidates that whole region is, I'm sorry to say, not to throw Korea shade, it's not going to be formed by Korea, and it's not going to be formed out of any nation out of Southeast Asia. I'm sorry to say. It's just not going to happen. But I can definitely see this, the Americans absolutely getting kicked out of continental Europe, having to fight the Red Army here in 1949. Now, key dates to keep in mind, 1949. So this is when George Orwell is, I guess, done, apparently, allegedly done writing 1984. But it's 1949 in his universe. So the U.S. definitely has nukes. Something to keep in mind. Unless that changed in this universe. Are there nukes in... Well, that's the whole theme of 1984 is, like, isn't the war kind of manufactured? Like, they don't know what else to do but to be at war with each other. That's why it's called the Forever War. It's kind of like they want to be at war with each other. So maybe they don't use nukes. And maybe if they can build it, they choose... Well, this is still early before they come into that mindset. I don't know, but I'm just curious about where nukes are right now. Because technically by 1949, I think I'm talking about so many dates that I'm going to get a little confused about what I'm throwing out there. By 1949, even the Soviets should have their own nukes. So there should be 2 nuclear powers in the world. But yeah, the Americans are definitely getting kicked out. Interesting. So why? Why? Do I need to back this up? It's 249. What was that name change that the British went through? Should I have actually looked at that? Oh, I should have looked at that. It was in very poor quality, 720p quality. It's socialist Britain, essentially. I don't know why the Brits went socialist as well, but that makes more sense why we combined. Okay, I'll buy that. Why we eventually, the Oceania nation, formed one singular nation. I mean, don't you think they'd be pretty pissed about us stealing Canada away, though? Well, regardless, the Brits see the writing on the wall. They now have to unite with basically North America at this point. Here we go. Now, this is the question I was asking. How do we figure this out? So apparently in this universe, the U.S. still beats Japan. And even more so, we have a united Korean peninsula here. So did the Soviets even invade? What even happened here? This is in the middle of the 1949 is when the Chinese Civil War finally came to a conclusion versus Nationalist China versus Communist China. Obviously, Mao and Communist China wins here. So the U.S. still beat Japan, and Japan, of course, controlled Taiwan and the Korean peninsula. Now, technically, shouldn't the Americans still have the Philippines? Before World War II, the Philippines was an American colony. We gave them independence. I think it was 1949, wasn't it? On the same day, July 1st, or July 4th, the same day as our independence. Okay, well, regardless, the Communist Chinese should still win here. I feel like for maybe a brief moment, the Oceania nation could have helped the Communist Chinese. Interesting that they're cutting in. I like the way this map is growing, this conflict. I like the way this is showing this because there's a lot less Chinese people. It'd be a lot easier to take this land. This is way more rural and barren versus like the population centers along the coast. So this would ultimately be harder to take. I could see them take this part first. Communism at its peak, the Communist Army has taken over to China. The world is becoming more communist each year. Yes. Oh, and look at this. Because not only was the unification, we can do context clues here. This is like detective work. Not only was the unification between the US and the UK, it was clearly with France as well, or Free France, because we see French Indochina also under the Oceania nation, which I think the Philippines are still this purple as well. So it's basically all of the Western allies that were forced to unite under Oceania. Now, technically, the Italian Mapper YouTube channel could have a different interpretation of the 1984 world. There's nothing that's stopping him from having a different interpretation. What year is it? 1950. So, yeah, that means that we're combining all of the UK's colonies, all of the French's colonies, and then whatever gains the US made over the Germans here in Africa. So their borders are expanding from Morocco all the way to Syria right now. Keep in mind, Spain is currently fascist. I don't think they mentioned it all. I don't think he mentioned at all that anything different happened during the Spanish Civil War. Also, Portugal is arguably a bit fascist here. Switzerland is neutral, but they're going to have to get taken over. Oh, yep. So the Soviets have now launched an invasion over Turkey. The war gets worse. With the occupation of the Turkish Republic, the USSR and Oceania are now engaging. Oh, it's like the Ottoman Empire fall all over again. Like outside powers coming together to go after the Italian peninsula. Or sorry, the Anatolia Peninsula, my bad. Oh, look, the Soviets are even doing Mediterranean invasions. I don't even believe they'd be able to do that. I'm not gonna lie. The Soviets are not known for their navy, and we now just saw the combination of the entire U.S. Navy at the time and the entire British Navy at the time. Do you know what massive naval forces are coming together for that? Unless the Soviets steal a bunch of things from Italy, but even if they steal like everything from Italy and everything from Germany, which is unlikely that they keep that stuff untouched and undamaged. I don't think they'd even come close to having any sort of the naval power the USA had after the war and even the British had after World War II. But, so I'm not buying this. It's fine. Like the naval invasion across the Mediterranean, I don't see them doing that, but, you know, you gotta make some... So there's still a lot of other... Oh, there are bombs dropped. Did I know about that? Has it been that long? Oh, yeah, so we're dropping nuclear bombs. It's 1950s, so one clearly got dropped on New York. Interesting that London didn't get a nuke dropped on it. We did drop a nuke on Paris, though. Why would we do that? We literally combined with France and the UK. Why would you nuke your old buddy's capital? Do they think it's that far gone? Now, nuking St. Petersburg, nuking Moscow, I'm not sure what this is. Is that the current Belarusian capital? This is Moscow. This is St. Petersburg. This is maybe the capital of Belarus, but it was all under former Soviet territory before. It looks like the Italians still control Eritrea, Ethiopia, Somalia. That's kind of funny. Now, the Oceania region, close call. The two superpowers decide to settle the conflict to prevent other millions of losses. Oh, cities like Paris and New York have been destroyed. It looked like the Soviets were the first one to drop the nuke. That was kind of interesting. It's July 1st, 1950. And so the neutral states have now just arisen. Interesting. So that's how we're going to begin to see the neutral side of things pop out, because we have this Sahara nation. We still have Spanish Morocco, or now it's like Spanish Western Sahara. We have Outer Liberia, which was formerly under the Italian Empire, and then Egypt. Okay. Usually when I have a question, I can kind of do some... I just advance the video, and I can usually find the answer to that question. Of course, the Soviets are going to move in after Sweden. Now, Sweden stayed neutral in both world wars. They did kind of... They kind of were forced to aid the Germans there with the railroads and stuff like that. And then obviously the Finns were part of the Axis briefly there. They ended up helping the Soviets at the end. But yeah, that didn't go very... Of course, the Finns were going to collapse. So the Soviet threat... the Soviet Union consolidates its dominions in Scandinavia. I'm having a tough time reading this smaller font. I'm blind, as you can see. So we still have about 33 years to go before the setting of 1984 has to take place. So there's still plenty of time to make map changes. Oh, Oceania just took over Ireland. I almost missed that. Switzerland's also going to have to be taken over by the Soviet Union as well. We're going to have to see name changes, and then I'm very curious to see how the East Asian Federation rises. How does that become a thing? Well, right now it's just Communist China. Okay, so this is the current world by 1950. The Communist Chinese have won. Nationalist China has probably still fled to Taiwan, which is now Oceania, I believe, right? And Oceania is going to need to take over. They still have to take over a lot more. Actually, Oceania is the nation that needs to take over the most here now. I just don't really buy the Soviets getting to North Africa's coast. I don't buy that part. I don't know how they would have done it otherwise, because this would have been a nice choke point for them. If we were all fighting in the Syrian deserts, that would have been insane. That would have been a tough, tough battle, even for the Red Army. What's happening? Are they rebuilding? The New Order, a widespread military coup has taken Oceania. The new leaders promise the working class for better lives. Okay, so have we gone full communist mode now? So this is the famous organization here for in 1984, the novel, or the movie. I'm surprised they haven't honestly made this into a TV show, or if it was a TV show, it got bombed. So this is like a brief civil war apparently that took place in the USA. So now we've become even more authoritarian, even more of a dictatorship. We just took Guyana, French Guyana, and Suriname, which was a Dutch colony at the time. That all kind of makes sense. That all checks out to me. Did we have Cuba? We already have Puerto Rico. We might have already just retaken Cuba. Remember, we had Cuba back in 1902, so retaking it again is, I guess that's fine. Yeah, what happens here? Oh, the Communist Chinese do have Taiwan again. And now, oh, that's right. So the Communist Chinese don't like this. So Mao, of course, in charge of Communist China, he just won a civil war. Forces are attacking Oceania's territories in Asia to establish a new superstate. World War II was a trailer for something worse. Okay, so yeah, like we mentioned, China or Japan was going to have to take over one of these two for this entity to come alive, the way we know the map in 1984. So yeah, it looks like Mao is going to be the one that kicks out the West from the Korean Peninsula. And again, I'm not going to buy, though. I'm sorry, I'm not buying that. Remember, that's the big reason why the Communist Chinese couldn't get to the island of Taiwan in the first place in our timeline. They did not have the boats. They could not do it. We were able to protect the island of Taiwan when the Nationalist Chinese fled after the Civil War. And that's still a very big reason why the Chinese are weary about trying to take back this island, is because the Americans still by far have the world's strongest fleet, the world's strongest navy. But so they did take Taiwan, and they're taking parts of India. They're getting close to Bangladesh, Nepal. They have Southeast Asia, just like the map that we observed before. But they need Japan still, I believe. Interesting that we let Pakistan go. Why did the British, or Oceania, let Pakistan go, but they kept India? Was this a part of the non-aligned movement between the deal that we made between the Soviet Union and Oceania? That might be what happened, but I'm not 100%, because after the nuclear war, we were like, oh crap, we need to create a buffer zone, and all these North African nations appeared. Maybe that's how Pakistan's there, because Pakistan was a part of the British Raj under the British Empire, and that should have got merged in. So yeah, we're able to use Belize because Belize was a British colony. We are doing a naval invasion of Cuba. We're taking that back. We're definitely taking Haiti and the Dominican Republic quite easily. So we're using a couple of new pockets that we hold all over America because the U.S. has united with the UK and France. Siege of Central America wants to establish a totalitarian state in all the Americas. hopes is a privilege for the brave enough. See, this is not crazy. This is literally I could see why some people would be like, this is crazy. It's not that crazy if you think about the policy the Americans from the U.S. have taken over all of Latin America for the last 200 years, since our President Monroe, the Monroe Doctrine. This has been our sphere of influence. It's basically ours. I don't think it's that much of a jump and a skip and a hop away from just saying, okay, America just needs to straight up invade and own all of this. Now, the U.S. played during the Cold War, we did a lot of this stuff where we essentially didn't own it on the map and we didn't own it technically per se. But if any of these countries, like Chile, for instance, decided that they were going to elect someone to left to be the leadership, we were going to come in, we were going to do a coup, and we were going to put basically a dictator in charge that was going to be Western allied. It's fine if he's a dictator as long as that dictator is allied to the West and is not communist at this time. So just taking the one step further of actually invading these places, yep, I could see that happening. You probably wouldn't even need to do it. I mean, the way the CIA controlled Latin America for so long, you wouldn't really need to probably invade. You could probably just do it by coups and just force their sovereignty to be given up freely. Think of the Anschluss of Austria. Think of all the times during World War II where a nation literally just walked in. Like the UK walking into Iceland, the British invasion of Iceland. They kind of just walked in and nothing was done about it. I think a lot of America would probably do this too. A lot of the Latin American nations would probably do this, especially when they see the world is approaching this way, as they see the Soviets getting stronger, as they see we're getting stronger, the Asian nation getting stronger. I'm fine with the war because it's more fun. It's YouTube, it's entertainment. We're doing that. I'm glad that the video chose to do it through war, but I don't think that would be necessary for all these places. Brazil would be a hard one because Brazil's a big, thick nation. That's got a lot of population. 1956, what do you invade Iran? Yeah, of course they are. They're invading Iran and Iraq. The Soviets have had struggling relations with Iran for a while. Soviet Middle East, the Red Army occupies the remaining free nations of the Middle East to ensure the influence and access their resources. Yeah, all the oil fields over in these nations. Very, very, very fascinating concept to think of the modern day Middle East that we see in our universe being forced to live under a communist authoritarian regime where they're not allowed to practice religion, where they're forced to be atheists. I feel like, first of all, Russia has already had to deal with a lot of Muslim extremists in their own territory in Russia, but this is a whole nother world taking over Iran and Iraq. I feel like now maybe in the 50s it'd be okay. I'm thinking more of it from the mindset, from the lens right now. But anyways, the point is I just feel like the Soviets would have to really crunch down and stomp out a ton of people that just weren't going to go along with it, especially in this region of the earth. Yeah, I could see a lot of this area not going along with a lot of the communist ideas. Okay, Soviet Union invading Afghanistan again. Now, that did not go very well for them in the 80s, but maybe it goes better for them in 1957. It probably does. Remember that there's only a couple of motorized and industrialized powers at this time. The Soviets are certainly one of them. Everything else has been either blown up or they've got the experience. They're still in the manpower. I mean, if the world was going to be overtaken by just a couple of powers, it probably would be in the 50s. East Asia, they got to take Mongolia. Mongolia has essentially acted as a massive buffer state between China and the Soviets. The problem is this would probably kick off a war with the Soviets. Mongolia exists literally just because if Russia takes it over, China will be mad, and if China takes it over, Russia would be mad. That's the only reason. That is literally the only reason. It's like the least densely populated place on Earth. It's actually a big nation that holds only 2 million people, something really, really small. So anyways, this has got to kick off the war, right? East Asia between the Soviet Union? Maybe not. I think it should though. They are a little, to be fair, they're distracted in the Middle East, so I could see them just turning a blind eye. What's happening now? I hear sound effects. Oh, okay. So Oceania essentially is just taking over all of the Congo, the Italian Ethiopia, and now we have to take over the rest of South America from the launching pad that we do have. Oh, nice edit there. Fun fact, this is what the U.S. still wants to do to Venezuela. The fate of South America. Forces land in South America coasts with central governments might fall. So if all this stuff happens fast enough, then maybe I could see it happening. However, if they wait too long, I could definitely see the Soviets and the Chinese teaming up to not let all these powers collapse. However, as we've seen, the Soviets and the Chinese kind of have their hands full in all sorts of different parts of the world, so maybe they would just let all this stuff fall. Because it's just too crazy. Brazil would be very tough. I'm glad they're going after the population centers of Brazil first, which is mostly coastline. It's mostly along the south here. It won't be easy to detect the Amazon rainforest, but there's also not a whole lot going on in the Amazon rainforest. The thing is, do we have the technology in the year 1960 to fully force like an authoritarian state? Like now we kind of do. I mean, we're seeing it all around the world, authoritarian policies and laws taken up into place. Not to bring up too many topical issues, but I mean, damn, you can. I don't know. I've never seen it firsthand, but I'm seeing a whole lot of internet reports that you can make a bad tweet and get arrested in the UK. That's literally that. I don't know if I could do the meme. But I was gonna say that's literally 1984. You can't even say stuff online anymore without getting arrested in the UK. Holy shit. So I think about it from that perspective. Like, now do we have the technology capable of forcing authoritarianism? Hell yeah. Did they in the 1960s, though? I feel like they didn't. I don't know. Not at the same rate that they do now with these cellular devices all within our pockets and literally every online search tracked and all of our data out there for, whether it's our messages or people talking, or we Americans have just accepted the NSA spies on us. No one even talks about that anymore. But it's an interesting concept. Wow, so there's 4.6 million French, American, and British troops. Maybe some Canadians are in there too. Like I said, I think there'd just be a couple of coups, and maybe there are a couple of coups, and I think some of this would just happen peacefully. 4.6 million here, 2.7 million here in Uruguay and Brazil. Paraguay, don't lose 90% of your population again, bro. I promise you're not going to want to do that. And then Argentina, this is getting interesting. Oh, Argentina just let it go. Very fascinating what happened there with Argentina, because let me tell you, in the year 1960, and in Brazil, not just Argentina, but in Brazil too, we just got a hold of a whole lot of Nazis. A whole lot. So many of them escaped through the rat lines down to South America. Argentina is the famous one, but they also went to Brazil too. They did also go to Brazil, but we just took and founded a lot of those, and let me tell you, we're definitely going to use them just like we did in real life. Operation Paperclip. When we got those German scientists, we're like, hey, you're going to work for us now, and we're going to just ignore any bad things that you did in the past. We're definitely going to do that in this universe too, that's for sure. All right, this is looking a lot more like, are we just going to skip years? Warzone territory? Wow, so we did that really fast, and now we just skipped to 1984. The only thing, so I did say that they would have to do this fast and stuff like that, and maybe they would have to do it fast just because they have the war economies, they have their industries already geared towards war and manufacturing, and most of the world's not. A lot of the world would just literally have to roll over, like Iran, like we saw Iran and Iraq and things like that to the Soviet Union at this time. The Soviets would have just been fighting so much longer than anyone else. Than neutral nations during World War II. But you gotta remember, they did lose like an entire generation of young men. And this is something I always think about. The Soviets, a lot of nations needed to wait. A lot of the generals at the time needed to wait because they predicted World War III would happen in the 60s, because they needed a new fresh batch of 18-year-olds to send into battle and die, because so many were just killed in World War II. So the way this scenario played out, and the thing is, I don't know if America would have seen the same population boom as we did during the baby boom or the boomers. The boomers might not have appeared in the same force because that was a time of peace. They came out of World War II, it was peaceful, everyone came back home, and they made a bunch of babies. In this universe, they literally just went to war, and they literally just kept fighting for 2 decades there. So would there be enough people to replenish? I mean, I guess we can force all the states that we just forced into Oceania. We could force the Mexicans soldiers, and we could force the Brazilian soldiers. That's probably an aspect of it. Did I miss when the Soviets took over Spain? I guess I did. But I'm not surprised that they did that. The 3 powers are established. This is literally just war zone now. When the hell did the Asians take over Japan? That was another problem that I was going to have. Yeah, they just did that somewhat randomly here. I do have a problem with that just because, again, unless, I don't know, by 65, was China able to get a much bigger navy? I don't think so. Remember that the U.S. in this world would adopt, and they did adopt, the exact same policy as the British, and that was to have the world's biggest fleet. Because if you have the world's biggest fleet, then no one's going to be able to get to your mainland. And let me tell you, in a 1984 universe, that is exactly what Oceania would do. Oceania would get their butt kicked in land warfare. Kicked. I think that they would get destroyed because they would have to put so much effort into a fleet and managing this worldwide empire. From South America to North America to Airstrip 1, which is the UK, to Australia. They would have such a massive fleet, and they just couldn't have that big of an army. I don't think. But what keeps Oceania safe, funny enough, has got to be the Sahara Desert. That probably keeps them rather safe. The Arabian Desert even. The natural geographic barriers that India has, the Himalayan mountains, keeps them safe from East Asia. It's very interesting to think about. Oh, did they lose India? It's 1971. And literally nothing happened. Oh, we're just in war fighting. Again, there could be details that I'm missing from the novel that I should have, that I just forgot. It's been so long since I read it. But so maybe they told us like, oh yeah, there's just been a war for 10 years and that's why they had to do it. Or maybe there's details that I'm forgetting that was written in the novel that I just forgot about. But here it is, 1984. And this is one scenario of how we could have came to this. So it's basically an entire... It starts communist, but it kind of ends up being like just authoritarian, just straight up dictatorship, which is similar to how a lot of the communist world ended up being. So very fascinating. I really like this. I mean, I think for the most part, I don't have too many problems with this. I think I agree with a lot of it. I'd say like 90%. I have big problems with like minor things, but we can kind of close our eyes to that stuff and just make believe. Let's not be too anal about it, Drew. I feel like I'm one of those guys in a movie that's just like notices a small plot hole and I'm like, no, this ruins the whole thing. I can't be like that. I gotta stop being like that. Love this comment. You know you're already dead when the camera points directly towards your country. Yeah, that's when some terrifying stuff happens. Oceania is at war with East Asia and has always been at war with East Asia. Interesting. Yeah, I forgot about that comment. This is literally 1984. Yep, that's the comment that still gets passed around all around YouTube. I love how Switzerland managed to last for so long despite being completely surrounded. Yeah, I mean, it was probably just tradition at that point. Just Stalin Daddy probably just kept them alive. Imagine living in the war zone and every day is like the Hunger Games. What if in SOG... Oceania actually only exists in Britain, and they only made you... Oh, yeah, that's a big conspiracy theory from the book, or a big theory, fan fiction theory from the novel, is that it's only Britain that's actually the authoritarian state, and they're basically like a North Korea, essentially. It's essentially North Korea. Imagine what the North Korean government tells the propaganda it tells to their people. They probably think that over there in North Korea. Basically, that's a crazy thought. I love that concept. It's funny that I made that comment about Britain earlier because the book focuses so much on Britain, and now now you can't say stuff online without getting arrested. So that's, wow, it's coming full circle. Look at that, George Orwell, nice. Called it a little bit too early, but he got to it eventually. Again, Italian Mapper, love this channel. Please go subscribe. Big thanks to my patrons this month. If you want your name here, check that Patreon link in the description down below. Never change Drew unless you want to. We need a Drew bobblehead figurine. Petition for Drew to make Hoi for ASMR
Connor
Tingles
Pavlik,
version 2.
Fredrik Tibblin,
KingBearHaze,
LoreTrack,
LuxembourgLover,
Miglu the Goat,
Nolan,
NordTyrol,
Tambre,
and William.